Welcome to the Becoming a Pilot podcast, where we share first-hand experiences, practical advice, and insights from pilots at every stage of their journey. I'm your host, Dave Angus, and whether you're just starting out or working towards your next rating, we're here to help you navigate the path to becoming a pilot. So buckle up, stay tuned, and let's talk all things aviation.
This podcast is brought to you by Genesis Flight College, Canada's premier flight center. With an advanced fleet of Diamond aircraft and experienced instructors, Genesis Flight College provides top-tier training in the heart of southern Georgian Bay. Ready to start your journey to becoming a pilot? Inquire today.
Welcome back to the Becoming a Pilot podcast. My name is Dave, and we have Tyler back. I think he's going to become our permanent co-host here at the Becoming a Pilot podcast.
I think so.
But today we're going to talk about the diverse weather that we have here in Ontario and how that plays a factor in your flight training. So Tyler, what's kind of the diversity that we have with weather here at Collingwood that can make you a better pilot?
Yeah, we get a lot of lake effects weather off of obviously the lake, and so that affects our flying quite a bit. Those weather systems move in quite rapidly. Thunderstorms, pop-up thunderstorms throughout the summer. We get a mix of winter weather, so you get a lot of icing conditions, and so it sets it up good for IFR training. But as well, we only have one runway. We'll take off both ways, but that gives us a pretty heavy crosswind sometimes, so that can be challenging as well. But overall, I think the weather that we experience here in Collingwood sets pilots up for real-world flying, because you pretty much experience most of the weather that you're going to experience globally.
Right, and that's something that a lot of people don't think about when they come into flight training. So one thing that I experienced was when I got into my flight training, I went to a flight school that actually owned the airport. And so they kind of called the shots of where we took off and landed. They had their active runway, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And they were not quite 90 degrees of each other, but kind of like a 45 degree. And whenever the runway was any little bit off, or the wind was any little bit off the runway, mm-hmm. They would change it. And so all the way up until probably halfway through my CPL training, I never really landed in anything more than a maybe 2 or 3 knot crosswind. Maybe once or twice with an instructor, but definitely not to the point where I felt proficient and confident with that. And coming to Collingwood, I found that I had to do a lot of practice to really get comfortable with that. And I find that's a real advantage that students have coming out of here. And just speaking of winds alone, that they get comfortable right away. Before they even do their first solo, we've done so much crosswind landings, and not even by choice, just by necessity. They've done so much crosswind landings that they can pretty much go to the max of the aircraft.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, the side slip ability training-wise comes in right away.
Right.
So we definitely get students prepared for harsher wind conditions. So
yeah, and like you were saying with that lake effect there, we could talk a little bit more about the clouds and the weather systems that pertain to that. But when we talk just about the wind itself, it can be very dynamic, right? And so a lot of our weather here at Collingwood comes from the west. A lot of it kind of it builds up intensity over the lake, hits landfall, may slow down a bit, and then picks right back up. And then here we are at Collingwood. So we may start the day with a headwind, then have a crosswind from the left or from the south, and then it's from the north.
Yeah, it shifts all.
So we have to. It really challenges us as pilots to take into consideration what the weather is, because we're not just told what we're doing. It's not a controlled airport. And that was another thing that I found a disadvantage is when I was told what runway to use, I never thought about it.
Takes all the decision making.
Yeah, so I would get an ATIS or an AWOS or whatever, weather information from an airport that I was going to. And honestly, I would not even think about what the winds were saying because I never had to make that decision.
Right.
And the father's like, oh, you know what? I should know.
Yeah.
Which way I'm taking off and landing based on the winds.
Right.
I did know it in theory, but when you don't put it into practice ever, it just becomes a non-existent skill.
Right. And from day one, we teach students to do crosswind calculations. So they're right from the get-go, they're figuring out which is the best runway to take off from, and and how much wind they're capable of handling in terms of a crosswind.
Right.
And we try in the syllabus, we have a lesson that's max demonstrated,
Okay.
crosswind, which for our aircraft's 20. And we try to get students out in, heavier crosswinds closer to that limit to give them that experience. They might not be able to safely land on their own, or, accurately, consistently land on their own at a higher crosswind, but at least they get the experience of handling a stronger crosswind. And we'll go to Edenville as well, because they have 2 separate runways, 4 in total, I guess, with both directions. And then we can really pick a stronger crosswind based on wherever the winds are coming from.
Yeah, that's a huge advantage with our location, besides weather, is just the amount of available airports. And right, we have within, well, we'll just say just over 25 miles, maybe 30 miles. We have Owen Sound, we have here, we have Midland, we have Edenvale, we have Lake Simcoe, and you go a little bit further, we got Aurelia. So we've got a lot of different airports with very different characteristics. And all these things may seem minute, may not seem important, but going to different airports every day, as opposed to just on your cross-country flights, it builds you to become a better pilot.
Definitely.
And getting that experience and comfortability with going to different airports, landing in diverse wind conditions and weather conditions, that is all going to make you that better pilot. And ultimately, we focus primarily on, the career-driven pilot. And when you go to that first job, whether that be instructing or whether that be a northern operation or right into, regional, if you don't feel comfortable landing in a crosswind, that's gonna cause some problems, right? They're expecting you to be comfortable in all those situations, to be able to make good pilot decision making. So the wind is one side of it. What about you talked about the clouds and IFR conditions? How does that play a role in our training here at Genesis?
Well, it's uncontrolled here, so we have those minimums for uncontrolled airspace. And when you get to the level where you're doing instrument flying, you'll get a lot of real world experience actually flying in cloud. So those weather systems push in all the time and quite quickly, especially in the summer with the convective activity. But yeah, those clouds can get pretty low, and in the summertime, there's no real issue with icing, so you can definitely get a lot of real IFR flying in.
Yeah, that's something that I'd say we encourage as well. Not to keep going back to my old school, they actually had a rule that we weren't allowed to go into clouds. Just they felt for liability. I get it. Their aircraft were old, maybe not as well equipped, no autopilot, things like that, where it may seem a little sketchier, albeit it was safe and fine. Everyone's trained and qualified to do that. But yeah, there is a difference when your aircraft are very capable to tackle those missions. And then the school to support that and say, you know what, we know the maintenance is good on our aircraft. We know that the aircraft are fully capable of it, and our instructors are fully capable of it. Get that real world experience. And I know the first time I went into a cloud hand flying, that's when illusions in the aircraft made total sense. Up until that point, I was like, what are you talking about? You're going to
kind of get
magically fall out of the air because you're disoriented and, because of the winds and whatever. I never really got the illusion thing. Went into the cloud for the first time, felt like I was tumbling out of the sky, and I was like, okay.
Yeah, what's up from here?
I now understand this and why we have to trust our instruments. And I think everyone needs to get that moment or have that situation happen so that they can truly understand the importance of getting that. So when people start talking about wanting to get an IFR and try to get it as quick as possible, and maybe they go down south to somewhere because their flight training can fly every day in good weather. Sure, it might check the boxes, but what are we trying to do here? It's the philosophy of checking boxes and passing the test, or becoming good pilots and getting that real world experience, especially on a glass cockpit. I think is the better option there.
Definitely, yeah.
So we talked about the weather system with the winds, and we talk about with the clouds and all of that. What other effects? What other issues do we have with the weather around here?
Well, we do have pop-up thunderstorms, a lot of convective activity in the summertime. And in the fall, usually you get lower clouds, rainy conditions. In the wintertime, a mix of, the cold front, lake effects especially. So icing is a big concern. And then springtime, yeah, you get a mix of weather in the spring.
Right.
Yeah. What else do you think?
I think the biggest thing, like you've touched on there, I think besides, well, it includes the rain, includes all that, is the variability, right?
Yeah,
We can come in the morning and it be beautiful, or completely socked in, and then in the afternoon it totally changes,
Clears
right?
it up. Yeah.
So that really helps build when we get into the cross country flight planning and weather briefing and all of that section of your flight training, which really starts right from the beginning. We have to learn how to interpret the GFAs, use the TAFs that we have from Wyerton and Muskoka, and try to figure out what we have here, because we don't have a forecast from Nav Canada near here, right? And as close as Wyerton seems and Muskoka seems, they're totally different systems, right?
Yeah.
I remember taking off one day looking at Muskoka, and there was literally a pocket. And it was just raining like crazy there, and everything else was blue skies around. And but that's just how it is. That is what makes us better pilots and better candidates. And I think that's the way that people have to start looking at it. The candidate pool, when people are looking at the jobs, I don't want to kind of derail too much, but it's a very saturated market. Everyone's got 200 hours and a commercial and a Group 1 IFR, right? That's a very saturated market. Now what's going to take you to the next level? And I remember when we talked to Josh that his thing was he did a really long cross country. He navigated right to the West Coast and came back, went into the States, and that was a good resume builder. Okay, so what else can you do? Well, you can train in actual IFR conditions. Now I've seen with tons of job applications, it says, how much glass cockpit time do you have? Right? Most flight schools, you're going to come out with 0. Right? Here, you're going to come out with 200 hours. Right? That's a huge thing now. They care about that, because it doesn't really matter what you're flying. Pretty much everything is going to have some sort of glass cockpit. Right?
Yeah.
So
onboard weather radar as well.
Weather radar, right? Learning how to use that, and like some of our aircraft have actual weather radar in it, so you can use that and learn how to use it. So all that stuff is really good, and that's what's going to create a better candidate. So I think at the end of all of this, one advantage that we have here at Collingwood is that diversity of the weather. We have to make better decisions, and we have to fly into and around different types of weather systems that are going to create more confident pilots and more competent pilots.
Definitely.
Which is big. And I think on kind of big picture on that, as a student coming into learning how to fly, that's important. And we want to be better pilots, more confident pilots, and not just pilots that pass test.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Cool.
We want to set the bar pretty high. So
yeah. So
awesome.
That's all I got for you. Anything you got for me?
No.
All right.
That's it.
Appreciate it. Thanks for coming back, as always.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we're going to keep having you back here. Like I said, you're now the
co-host.
The co-host of the show. All right.
Let's sign the contract.
All right. Thanks, Tyler.